Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, following the death of Justice Antonin Scalia, the flag is flying at half-mast there in D.C. We now know that he will lie in repose at the Supreme Court on Friday, and his funeral will be held this Saturday at 11 a.m. Now, President Obama addressed the nation today, speaking about the late justice, as well as addressing any rumors surrounding his replacement.
There's not going to be any particular position on a particular issue that determines whether or not I nominate them, but I'm going to present somebody who indisputably is qualified for the seat, and any fair-minded person, even somebody who disagreed with my politics, would say would serve with honor and integrity on the court.
Well, let's hope that we can trust Obama to do what he says. You know, he doesn't have that much longer where he has to be shackled there by the puppet masters. So let's hope that he doesn't sell out the country for at least the next generation. But based on what we're hearing of who his potential replacements might be, this could be pretty frightening. One of the top replacements being touted is Attorney General Loretta Lynch. They're saying she's a very likely candidate. She is a First Amendment critic, so she's definitely not someone who's going to be upholding the Constitution to its original meaning the way Justice Scalia always had been known for. So, you know, I'll remind you, in December, Lynch attacked the First Amendment. She criticized the ability of people to issue hateful speech of all types from the anonymity of a screen. And this was, of course, talking about the statements people were making, anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim statements, and she promised that the Justice Department would take action when speech edges toward violence. Of course, she was immediately attacked on that, called out. She backpedaled, or she recalibrated her statements, saying, of course, we prosecute deeds and not words. So this is someone who obviously has a double standard of the First Amendment, and this is someone who's going to be a top appointee to the Supreme Court. This is quite frightening. So this is why it's so important to make sure the next person who is appointed, like Scalia, adheres to a very strict interpretation of the Constitution, its original meaning, its original interpretation. Now, a lot of concern is over the fact that Scalia's death can actually boost the legal chances for Obama's climate plan. So a vote to block the Obama administration's ambitious climate regulation was one of Scalia's last acts as a Supreme Court justice. Just days before he died, he voted with the other conservative members of the High Court to put a hold on the administration's plans to implement the Clean Power Plan while it is litigated. So without Scalia, the conservative members of the court, they no longer have a majority, at least in the short term. And so this sudden shift has given a boost to supporters of the emissions rule. Now, of course, with this comes a lot of controversy, a lot of conspiracy theories swirling around the death of Scalia. One of the main things is, why was he rushed to be embalmed so quickly? And now we actually have some veteran homicide investigators questioning the lack of an autopsy in Scalia's death. One of those is retired Brooklyn homicide detective Patricia Tufo, and she was speaking with the New York Post. She said, it's not unreasonable to ask for an autopsy in this case, particularly knowing who he is. He's not at home, there are no witnesses to his death, and there was no reported explanation for why a pillow was over his head. Of course, that was one of the really bizarre things that we learned. And then, of course, there's another former head of criminal investigations for D.C. police, William O. Ritchie, and he wrote a post on Facebook saying, as a former homicide commander, I am stunned that no autopsy was ordered for Justice Scalia. You have a Supreme Court justice who died, not in attendance of a physician. You have a non-homicide trained U.S. Marshal tell the justice of the peace no foul play was observed. You have a justice of the peace pronounce death who wasn't on the scene without any medical training, opining that the justice died of a heart attack. What medical proof exists of a myocardial infarction? Why not a cerebral hemorrhage? And he went on to say, you know, how can this marshal say without a thorough post-mortem that he was not injected with an illegal substance that would simulate a heart attack? Did he check for petechial hemorrhage in his eyes or under his lips? that might suggest he was suffocated, maybe giving a reason why there was a pillow over his face? Did he check his breath for any foul odor that might suggest that he was poisoned? My gut tells me there is something fishy going on in Texas. And of course, we've been saying the same thing. Now we're wondering, will Governor Abbott look into this? Will he do some other further investigating into the death of Justice Scalia? Of course, he's previously looked into other controversial allegations. Over the weekend, he issued a somber condolence recognizing the late Supreme Court justice. Now, despite Scalia's prominence, there is still a lot of confusion lingering over the head of how indeed did he die. Now, we had Pulitzer Prize nominated investigative journalist John Rappaport on the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show today, and he has some pretty bombshell news.
You know, people are asking, well, is the Texas governor going to order an investigation? What are you talking about? What about the federal government? You know, are you saying that this is not a federal case if a U.S. Supreme Court justice dies under strange circumstances? We're hearing nothing about an FBI investigation being opened, nothing from the Attorney General, nothing from politicians in Washington who should be screaming their heads off that a Supreme Court justice of the United States dies and no autopsy is done and a ruling is made off the cuff like that from a judge who's shown to be completely incompetent, a total goofball at the best. And there is nothing going on in Washington except, oh, we're very sad to say that Supreme Court justice, passed away. No task force.
And Dick Cheney, his buddy, said no comment. Nothing. Just like, no comment.
Yeah. So it's as if they're saying, well, look, we know the public is completely asleep.
Yeah.
They've been hypnotized successfully, so there's not going to be any outcry on that level. So why should we care? You know, so in case, in fact, we did kill him, there's just not going to be any push for an investigation. That's completely absurd. I mean, I assume that there's a whole lot of people out there in the United States by now who don't even know what the U.S. Supreme Court is, and they've never heard of Scalia. And so they're just totally asleep at the wheel. But, you know, the U.S. Supreme Court, in case anybody's, in the dark about this, is the highest judicial authority in the land. And so the unexplained death of a Supreme Court justice would be on the same level as the death of a president or a vice president or Speaker of the House or anything of that level, at least, and yet nothing, absolutely nothing. I mean, reporters, mainstream reporters, don't find it curious that the FBI is not opening investigation into this death, that they're saying nothing, that nothing is happening at all? I mean, who are these friggin' people anyway?
Exactly. And then you have in your article that you wrote, Was Justice Scalia Murdered? Forget Conspiracy Theory. This is real. You have a quote from William O. Ritchie, former head of criminal investigations for D.C. Police. You have a Supreme Court justice who died not in attendance of a physician. You have a non-homicide trained U.S. Marshal tell the justice of the peace that no foul play was observed. You have the justice of Pernice pronounce the death while not being on the scene without any medical training, opinining that he died of a heart attack. What medical proof exists? There is none. And now it's all been flushed down the drain by the embalmer.
And now the last, by the embalmer. And now the last thing that we're hearing is, well, yes, he did have a heart condition. So therefore, we can just automatically assume without any medical examination whatsoever that a U.S. Supreme Court justice died of a heart attack in his sleep. And the pillow was just on his face, and that's the end of that story, and we don't need to worry about who else was at the ranch or the fact that Poindexter was a, contributor to the Democratic Party or a Democratic supporter or that he received an award from Obama. I mean, nothing of this could possibly be relevant. So we can just excuse all of that, and then we'll have a funeral, and his body will lie in state in Washington for a few days or a week. We don't care about the family. We don't care that the family is completely silent, that they have nothing to say, or at least as far as we know, they have nothing to say because nothing is being reported. I mean, the scandal here is just enormous, regardless of the fact of whether or not he was, in fact, murdered. The fact that there is no federal investigation that has been opened into this? I mean, that's called a clue, folks. That is a clue.
It's called a cover-up. That's I'll say it. It's a cover-up.
Yeah, I mean,
they're covering something up.
Well, like I said last week, it must be an election year. We have all of the alphabet agency heads coming out to say an attack on the U.S. soil is imminent. ISIS or their supporters are probably going to do something pretty big this year. And of course, I'm sure it will be timed to sway the election. Well, now, you know, not only are they saying this encryption, it's so terrible, we've got to weaken the right of the people to use encryption because we can't stop terrorists with it. Now they're actually doubling down on that need to weaken encryption. Now we have the CIA director, John Brennan, actually going to 60 Minutes saying that they knew, the CIA knew that the system was blinking red. They had the warning signals there, it was blinking red, and they knew days before ISIS launched its horrific attack in the French capital. They knew they were planning some impending atrocity, but the CIA was unable to intercept the encrypted messages the terrorists were using in the buildup to the massacre. So once again, what is the point of all of this spying when, again, it fails? But he goes on to say that, he said, you know, the main thing that we learned from this Paris attack is that ISIS is planning a lot more attacks that we don't really know about because of this encryption. He also said that he is expecting ISIS or their supporters to plan some attacks here in the U.S. He doesn't know if they'll be successful, but he does say that if they do manage to strike in the U.S., then it will encourage us to be even more forceful. So what does that mean? Is that going to look like the permanent police state lockdown that they're experiencing in France? They're being more forceful there with the people in France, less freedom for the people there, more security, less encryption for you. But let's go ahead and take a look at what the frontman for Eagles of Death Metal had to say about gun control, about this being more forceful in order to stop terrorism. He was actually on stage at the Bataclan when this massacre was going off, and he seemed really upset. He's actually in France on Tuesday. They were playing a concert for some of the hundreds of survivors of that Paris attack, and here's what he had to say.
Gun control kind of doesn't have anything to do with it, but if you want to bring it up, I'll ask you, did your French gun control stop a single person from dying at the Bataclan? And if anyone can answer yes, I'd like to hear it, because I don't think so. I think the only thing that stopped it was some of the bravest men that I've ever seen in my life charging headfirst into the face of death with their firearms. I think the only way my mind has been changed is maybe that until nobody has guns, everybody has to have them. Because I don't ever want to see anything like this ever happen again.
So in addition to those really cool pink sunglasses, he also had some really great things to say. Hughes he's a member of America's NRA. He says he supports Donald Trump, but he went on to tell them, I don't go anywhere in America without a gun anymore. That sucks, and I'm not paranoid. I'm not a cowboy, but I want to be prepared. And this is what I'm really happy to see this, because you've got someone there who's in the entertainment industry who isn't being duped and swirled around with what they're telling everyone in the entertainment industry to back gun control. You've got to be for gun control. Here you have someone who is faced with the terrorism that the CIA and other alphabet agencies tell us are coming to this country, and he says he's not going anywhere without his gun. We are in an information war. We have the government out there telling us that ISIS is going to attack U.S. soil this year, while at the same time we have the mainstream media telling us that we need to give up our guns.
We believe in win-win, folks, treating people like we want to be treated. That's why we develop nutraceuticals with Dr. Group and other top researchers, chemists, scientists, you name it. He's one of our advisors, to come up with products like Anthroplex that is an original product that he made just for us. And this is a base system to make super male or super female vitality work even better. It is natural. It just helps get your body pumping and going in the way you need to be going. And Dr. Group is here till we go to break to tell us about the latest product at InfoWarsLife.com. Anthroplex that out of the gates, and we do this all the time with the new product, we discount it out of the gates to get you to try it, knowing that you're going to love it. It'll sell out. So InfoWarsLife.com, Anthroplex, 15% off and free shipping for the next 2 days only when you get it with super male or female vitality. Let's go to Dr. Group. Why do you call this the foundation to start the fire, and then the super male takes you to the next level?
Well, we just look at the base problem that's going on right now in all over the world, which is the endocrine disrupting chemicals, the amount of estrogen that men have, the femininity of men, and what's going on even in children right now with low testosterone levels, low sperm count levels, and the problems that in the attack that we're seeing on the endocrine systems of both male and female. So I'm always looking for ways to boost that and to make it more effective and naturally get the body to start producing these hormones and balancing themselves. So what we decided to do was, how can we add a few other components in there that would actually boost the effectiveness of the super male vitality and at the same time address different issues that the male might have, so it would be a full approach. And one of those was zinc. And zinc is actually necessary for the production of testosterone. There's more and more studies coming out that zinc is essential for hormone balancing.
What is in the goat weed? You've got one of the purest, strongest organic forms of it. What's so magic about the goat weed?
Well, the horny goat weed was given that name because years ago in India, they noticed that a certain time of the year, this weed would grow and the goats would eat it and they would just go crazy with all the female goats. So that's how it was developed. It's called epimedium. And what that's been proven to do over thousands of years is increase sexual pleasure, help balance the male hormones. It can actually be used for women as well. But it really kind of resets and brings the hormone balance, improves sperm motility, and increases testosterone levels.
So it counters the stuff they've been throwing at us. Results will vary overall. All I know is dynamite. I mean, absolutely dynamite with the stamina, with the weightlifting, with the swimming. Folks, the new product is available. Anthroplex, available at InfoWarsLife.com. Dr. Group, thank you for developing this amazing product.
Thank you.